If I start on the Dorian, it's going to be a D to the P. That's going to be a 2-3 modal range, a 2 note away from the Dorian first modal half step, which would be the second scale degree. If we thought about it by scale degree, a PY, it's going to be a PY plus, meaning it's going to land us in the Lydian Ocean if we start and go the same distance from the Phrygian. So it's going to be a 3 to a 4.5 modal range. It's going to be a 2 note away from the Phrygian, 1.5, landing us in the ocean. If I start on the Lydian, it's going to be a YX modal range, a 4-5 modal range, meaning 2 notes away from the Lydian first modal half step, which would be the second scale degree. For the Mixolydian, it would be an XA modal range, a 5-6 modal range, 2 note away from the Mixolydian first modal half step. From the Aeolian, AN modal range, 6-7 modal range, 2 notes away from the Aeolian first modal half step, which would be the second scale degree, and the Locrian, it lands us in the ocean. If we go 2 steps up from the Locrian, 2 to the Ionian plus, we land in the Ionian Ocean, 7 to the 1.5 modal range, meaning we go up 2 notes up from the Locrian 1.5 modal half steps. So let's go up to the next one. If we go 3 up, so if we go 3 up and we measure them, these are all going to be lime for our color, standing for 3 half steps. But if we go from the Ionian and we go 3 up, it's going to land us in the ocean. It's going to be an Ionian to the D plus or the Dorian Ocean, 1 to the 2.5 modal range, meaning we're going 3 notes up from the Ionian, which is 1.5 modal half steps up, which lands us in the ocean, which would be like a 2.5 scale degree if you had 0.5s, but we don't. So it would be 3, right? It's a minor third. So it's a dy from the Dorian. So the Dorian is a minor mode, so we would expect it to land us in a continent if we go 3 notes up from it. So it would be a dy modal range if I go 3 notes up, a 2-4 modal range, meaning I go 3 notes up from the Dorian, which would be 2 modal half steps, or the third scale degree, it would be a minor third. So for the Phrygian, also a minor mode. So it would be a px modal range, a 3-5 modal range, meaning we go 3 notes up from the Phrygian, 2 modal half steps up, which would be the third scale degree, a minor third. If we go from the Lydian, which is a major mode, we land in the ocean because we're going 3 notes up, or a minor third distance. That would be a YX plus modal range, or landing us in the Mixolydian Ocean. So it's going to be a 4 to a 4.5 modal range, a 3 notes away from the Lydian, 1.5 modal half steps, which would be 2.5 scale degrees, or in essence, the third, meaning it would be a minor third. So it would be an XA modal range. If we start on the Mixolydian, it's going to land us on the ocean because Mixolydian is a major mode. 5 to a 5.6 modal range. It would be going 3 notes up from the Mixolydian, 1.5 modal half steps, which would be 2.5 scale degrees, or in other words, 3, because we don't have 0.5s on the scale degrees. So an AI modal range, starting from the Aeolian back to the minor scale, that would be a 6-1 modal range. So we would be going 3 notes up from the Aeolian, second modal half step, which would be the third scale degree, a minor third. Similarly, the Locrian is kind of like a minor mode, but it has a flat 5 in D modal range, 7-2 modal range, 3 notes up from the Locrian, second modal half step. All right, so let's go to the next one. If we go 4 notes up, that would be a major third distance. We call that mint from the color. It looks very similar from color, but it's slightly different if you train your eyes to see the difference there. We have an IP modal range, so that would be the Ionian to the Phrygian, a 1-3 modal range, meaning if you go 4 modal half steps up from the Ionian, it would be the second modal half step from there, which would be the third scale degree, or a major third. From the Dorian, a minor mode, going 4 steps up, a major third will land us in the ocean. So we go from the Dorian to the Lydian plus, or the Lydian Ocean. So it's going to be a 2 to a 4.5 modal range, or we went up 4 notes from the Dorian to a 2.5 modal half steps, which would be a 3.5 from a scale degree, or in other words, a third. So we have from the Phrygian, also a minor mode. So it's going to land us in the ocean. So it's going to be a Phrygian, a PX modal range, landing us in the Mixolydian Ocean. It would be 3 to a 5.5. We're going 4 notes up from the Phrygian, and that would be 2.5 modal half steps, which would be 3.5 scale degrees, or a third a major third. From the Lydian, Lydian is a major mode, so going 4 up, a major third, will land us on a continent. We're good. So that's going to be a YA modal range, a 4-6 modal range. Or we go 4 notes up from the Lydian second modal half step, which would be a third scale degree, a major third. From the Mixolydian, a major mode, we should be good, landing on a continent. Be an XN modal range, a 5-7 modal range, going 4 notes up from the Mixolydian node, second modal half step, which would be a third scale degree. That would be a major third from the Mixolydian. Aeolian, minor mode, going a major third up will land us in the ocean. It's going to be an AI plus modal range, landing us in the Ionian Ocean. A 6 to a 1.5. It's going to be 4 notes up from the Aeolian, 2.5 modal half steps, which would be 3.5 scale degrees. So, and from the Locrian, kind of like a minor, so the 4 note away major third is going to land us in the ocean. That would be an ND plus modal range, landing us in the Dorian Ocean, a 7 to a 2.5. That's going to be 4 notes up from the Locrian, 2.5 modal half steps, 3.5 then from the scale degrees, which would be a third or major third away from the crazy Locrian. What if we go 5 up? So if we go 5 up, we're going to call all of these from a color standpoint aqua. So if I go 5 up, that's the perfect fourth, which is fairly stable and will land us on a continent if we do it from almost any of the starting points. So from an Ionian, IY lands us on the continent of Lydian, a 1-4 modal range. That would be a 5 notes away from the Ionian node, third modal half step, which would be a fourth scale degree, which would be a perfect fourth. That would be a Dorian. It's going to land us on a continent. We're good. A DX modal range lands us on the Mixolydian continent. It's going to be a 2-5 modal range, meaning if we go 5 up, 5 half steps up from the Dorian, it would be 3 modal half steps up or fourth scale degree, a perfect fourth. We're good on the Phrygian. It'll land us PA, landing us on the Aeolian continent. 3-6 modal range, going 5 up from the Phrygian would be 3 modal half steps up or fourth scale degree, a perfect fourth. But the Lydian causes us a problem. This is why the Lydian is almost as crazy as the Locrian, but nobody knows about it because they hang out with the cool people. So like they cover it up. It's like the mainstream media, they cover it up even though it's crazy. So that's going to be a Y to an A plus modal range. And so we land in the Aeolian Ocean. So it's going to be a 4 to a 6.5. So it's going to be 5 notes away from the Lydian node. That should be a 2.5, not a 2.2, but 2.5, 2.5. Okay. So then on the Mixolydian, we're good. That would be an XI modal range, a 5-1 modal range, landing us on the Ionian Ocean. If we go from the Mixolydian up 5 from the Mixolydian would be 3 modal half steps, which would be 4 scale degrees or a perfect fourth away. Good from the Aeolian, an AD modal range lands us on the Dorian continent. So that'd be a 6-2 modal range. If we go 5 steps up, 5 half steps from the Aeolian node, it would be 3 modal half steps, which would be a fourth scale degree, perfect fourth. And if we go on the Locrian, we're even good. That would be an NP modal range, landing us on the Phrygian, a 7-3 modal range, going up 5 notes from the Locrian node would be 3 modal half steps from there, which would be a fourth scale degree, which would still be a perfect fourth from a scale degree standpoint. Let's go to the next one. Let's say we go 6. 6 is the crazy distance. It's electric sky. Watch out, you'll get electrocuted in the electric sky with a 6-note distance. That's the tritone. So if you go from the most of these are going to land you in the ocean, right? Because 6 notes away is a very sharp sound, right? So we're going to say it's going to be an IY plus modal range, meaning it's going to land us in the Lydian Ocean. That would be a 1 to a 4.5 modal range, meaning if I go 6 notes up from the Ionian, it's going to be a 3.5 modal half steps up, which would be a 4.5 from a scale degree, which we don't have 0.5, so it would be a 6. Or it would be a 5, a flat 5. Yeah, okay. If we go to a DX modal range, it's going to go from the Dorian, it's going to land us in the Mixolydian Ocean. DX plus, that's going to be a 2 to a 2.5. So if I start on the Dorian and I go up 6, then from the Dorian, it's going to be 3.5 modal half steps up, which would be 4.5 from a scale degree standpoint. So then if I start on the Phrygian, once again, it lands us in the ocean. It's going to be a PA+, or landing us in the Aeolian Ocean, which would be a 3 to a 6.5 modal range. If I go 6 notes up from the Phrygian, it would be a 3.5, then 3.5 modal half steps would be a 4.5 scale degree if we had 0.5s on the scale degrees. So then Lydian is the one that fits. Again, this is where the Lydian is crazy. So we land on a continent if you go 6 up from the Lydian. That would be a YN modal range, or a 4-7 modal range. In other words, if I go 6 notes up from the Lydian, it would be 3 modal half steps up, and I'd land on the Locrian continent, right? So that's the weird one, and it's also weird because usually you call it a flat 5, but no, this is an augmented fourth. Okay, so then we have an XI. So if I start on the Mixolydian, we'd have a range of an XI plus, or landing in the Ionian Ocean. That would be a 5 to a 1.5 modal range. 6 notes up from the Mixolydian would be 3.5 modal half steps up. If we start on the Aeolian, we land in the ocean. It's been AD plus modal range, landed us in the Dorian Ocean. That would be a 6 to a 2.5 modal range. In other words, if I go 6 notes up from the Aeolian, it would be 3.5 modal half steps. Locrian, however, this is where Locrian is crazy. It works. We land on a continent. That would be an NY modal range, a 7-4 modal range, landing us on the Lydian continent if I go 6 up from the Locrian continent. So that means if I go 6 up from the Locrian node, it would be 4 modal half steps, which would be the 5th scale degree. So the same distance here, but it would be 4 modal half steps up, 5th scale degrees from the Locrian. Same distance, but it would be 3 modal half steps up, or an augmented 4th from, so it'd be a flat 5th over here and an augmented 4th over there. Okay. Enough on that. Let's go to the next one. That's going to be, how many steps up are we at now? 7 steps up. That's going to be a very stable distance. It's going to be a color of azure. So this deep azure blue is going to be very stable, similar to the one we had up top. So if we go from most places, most continents, and we go up 7, we land at another continent most of the time. So if I go up 7 from the Ionian, it's going to land me on the Mixolydian, an IX modal range, a 1-5 modal range. In other words, if I go 7 notes up from the Ionian, it would be 4 modal half steps up, which would be a 5th scale degree, which we call a perfect 5th. A D, if I start from the Dorian, go 7 up, we land on the Aeolian, DA modal range, 2-6 modal range, 7 notes away from the Dorian, 4 modal half steps up, which would be the 5th scale degree, or perfect 5th. If I start on the Phrygian, I'm good. I land on the Locrian, PN modal range, 3-7 modal range. Going up 7 from the Phrygian will be 4 modal half steps up, 5th scale degree, which would be a perfect 5th. If I start on the Lydian and I go up 7, it would be a YI modal range, a 4-1 modal range. 7 notes up from the Lydian would be 4 modal half steps up, or a 5th scale degree. On the Mixolydian, I'd land on the Dorian, XD modal range, 5-2 modal range, 7 notes up from the Mixolydian, 4 modal half steps, which would be the 5th scale degree. If I go from the Aeolian, I'm good. Be an AP modal range, landing on the Phrygian, a 6-3 modal range, meaning 7 notes up from the Aeolian, 4 modal half steps, which would be 5th scale degree, which would be a perfect 5th. But Locrian is crazy, because if I go from here, it's the only one where you land in the ocean. You'd land, if you go to be an NY plus, landing in the Lydian Ocean modal range, 7 to a 4.5, which would be 7 notes up from the Locrian, which would be a 4.5 modal half steps, meaning a flat 5, flat 5th.